Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th, with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
We all understand short sleep and how that can be a problem. You're just not getting enough.
Yeah.
But long sleep is a little bit more complicated. And shown this U-shaped relationship where the short sleepers and the long sleepers seem to have problems with their thinking and memory over time. You build up, problems with reaction time, for instance, and attention, but you may not perceive that you're as badly impaired as you actually are.
I'm Sarah Fensky. If you're having trouble sleeping, you may want to pay attention to that. Of course, many Americans struggle with sleep, but a new study out of Washington University School of Medicine shows the big consequences that come with too little or too much sleep. The study was recently published in Brain, and it finds a clear link between both too much and too little sleep and cognitive decline. And joining us now with more information is Dr. Brendan Lucey. He's an associate professor of neurology and the director of the WashU Sleep Medicine Center. Dr. Lucey, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
So your study tracked cognitive function in older adults. How did this work?
This study was part of a very large study that's been going on since the 1980s. It's an observational study, meaning that participants are brought back for repeated assessments over time. And some of the measures that are done are cognitive tests. So looking at measures of memory and attention and other thinking and memory functions. And these are done every year. As also part of the study, the participants have markers for the changes in the brain with Alzheimer's disease. As individuals develop Alzheimer's disease, they can develop plaques in the brain of amyloid, the amyloid beta protein. They can also accumulate tau, and this leads to the cognitive symptoms associated with Alzheimer's disease. And the participants also had a single sleep assessment as part of this project. And these were assessments that were done at home. They answer some questionnaires and keep a sleep log. But the primary measure that we looked at is a forehead device that measures brainwave activity over multiple nights at home. So we're able to look at if someone's awake or asleep during the night, what stage of sleep they're in, because during the night we cycle through different sleep stages, such as rapid eye movement sleep is one that some of the listeners may have heard of. And we're able to also look at other measures of sleep quality.
So one of the things that we know about Alzheimer's is that poor sleep tends to be a symptom of it. So how do you separate out whether the Alzheimer's is causing the poor sleep or whether the poor sleep is, you get what I mean here, like how do you know what leads to what?
No, that's an excellent question, and that's a major focus of the research that I'm doing at Washington University and many others, both here and around the world. A leading hypothesis is that it's a bidirectional relationship, meaning that sleep changes are both a marker for the changes in the brain that we see with Alzheimer's disease, but also that sleep disturbances can be a risk factor for developing Alzheimer's disease, which opens up the possibility that we could intervene with a sleep intervention and potentially change the trajectory, delay, or prevent the onset of Alzheimer's disease.
So if I'm not getting enough sleep and you're able to intervene and get me to sleep beautifully, that might actually hold Alzheimer's at bay?
That's a hypothesis that we're working on. We're a long way before putting that into the clinic and being able to say if we intervene on this sleep problem that we can change that trajectory. But that's something that we're working towards.
Wow. So with this study, you're not just relying on people's self-reporting, which we all know. We have a tendency to just not really know what's going on around us. You're looking at how much sleep people are actually getting, the quality of sleep they're getting. What would you say after looking at this, what do you now know about how that affects, one's brain?
There have been a lot of studies that have looked at self-reported sleep time and cognitive or memory performance, thinking performance over time, and shown this U-shaped relationship where the short sleepers and the long sleepers seem to have problems with their thinking and memory over time. What this study really added was the objective measures, the EEG, brainwave measures of sleep and wake activity. And we also found this same relationship with the short sleepers and the long sleepers doing worse on the cognitive testing over time. One thing I would say about the long sleepers is that they may be sleeping a long time, but I suspect that they're not doing quality time. I think we all understand short sleep and how that can be a problem. You're just not getting enough.
Yeah.
But long sleep is a little bit more complicated. It could be that someone has an untreated sleep disorder. A common one that I see in the sleep clinic is obstructive sleep apnea. And when it's untreated, an individual may sleep a long period of time, but they're not getting quality sleep because of the repeated breathing problems they have during sleep. And so the analogy I like to use is it's like they're skipping across the pond. So they're getting into the top layers of the water, the light stages of sleep, but they're missing out on those deeper stages. So even if they're doing the long time of sleep, they're not getting those restorative sleep stages.
So it sounds like my reaction to this should not be, oh, I might be sleeping too long. I think I need to just get up earlier just to keep my brain sharp. That's not what you're recommending here.
That's not what I'm recommending at all. And the point that you brought up about the self-reported measures versus the more objective brainwave measures that we use is there is a lot of evidence in the scientific literature that objective measures are usually lower than the self-reported measures. People overestimate how much sleep that they're getting.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, so this study really does hit home. This is important. Like, we can't ignore sleep.
Yeah, I think I think that we definitely can't avoid sleep. It's essential. It's really critical to health and impacts all aspects of good health.
So we want to hear your sleep questions. I'm actually going to kick things off with a sleep question that comes in from Eric, who lives in Kirkwood.
So lately I've been falling asleep with headphones in my ears, listening to just some peaceful sounds, and it works great, and I fall asleep really easily. However, I wonder if that's actually a harmful behavior in the long run. I'm just curious about the possible ramifications of sleeping with earbuds in. Thanks.
And that, again, is Eric, who lives in Kirkwood. And I'm not sure if he means, the physical act of having these earbuds in or the reliance on music in order to calm your brain down and go to sleep. But I'd be very curious to hear what you think of this.
I think it's very common that people listen to either audiobooks or like the waves crashing, something that's very, very calming. And white noise maker is another thing that I think is a very common tool that people use. I don't know of any specific. There's no specific issue with using the sound and as a background noise, as long as it's quiet and unobtrusive. I think I would encourage using more of a speaker in the room rather than the earbuds. I don't know that it's harmful per se, but you ideally want it in the background, and it's more sort of soothing, and earbuds potentially could be disruptive if you were to lay on them or they were to fall out.
This could be bad for your ears, or you could get strangled up.
Right.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah, if there's wires. Hopefully they're wireless.
Hopefully wireless. I'm showing my age here by assuming they have wires. Well, we do want to hear your sleep questions. So I'm going to open the phone lines. You can call us at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can also send us a tweet at STL on air. And we're curious if you're finding ways that work, Like, what techniques have helped you turn around your sleeping as well? Maybe there's an app you use. Maybe you've changed some of your practices, and that also helps you. This doesn't have to be all negative, right? There's positive things out there. There are things that work. We got a tweet from Amanda. She's the mother of a younger child, and she said, "I'm interested to learn just how many years you can get away with not sleeping due to baby/toddler wake-ups. Is this just one of those seasons of life disruptions? Am I good? Or should I decamp to a hotel immediately?" I think the cognitive decline has her a little worried here.
I think anyone who's had children knows that it's very challenging to get sleep around the child's sleep schedule. I would be reassuring that it does get better.
I'm here to testify to that as well. Yeah, you can pull out of that cycle.
But when the baby's first born, they may not be on the same schedule that we are. They're likely not to be. Maybe up during the night and sleeping during the day. That certainly was something that I experienced. They're also going to be much more fragmented, up much more frequently, and I think that in the short run, if there's hopefully there's additional help in terms of to allow her to get sleep that she needs.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. But in terms of the long term outcomes, I wouldn't be concerned about the cognitive impairment getting Alzheimer's disease at that young age, relative to when Alzheimer's disease would usually begin.
This period is probably not doing permanent damage as long as she can not be behind the wheel of a car, for example.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
so it's something to
Those
take
acute
seriously,
changes.
but that's
Right.
not going to be something where she's going to feel this 50 years later.
Right.
Okay. Well, that is good. I do feel that once I started sleeping better, which happened for me about 6 months ago after my kids started sleeping, it was just like night and day. I feel like I'm back to my old self. That's what one should expect scientifically as well.
Yeah. I think as you're able to get more consolidated sleep, where you're getting a block of time where you can sleep in uninterrupted, that you would resume to have that restorative quality.
I'm going to go to the phone lines. Robin is calling from Clayton. Robin, hi. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hi. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for taking my call. Just a simple question with the stress of COVID. And I know the use of aids like melatonin and Ambien have become more common. I'm just curious what kind of impact they have on the quality of sleep, but also, the cognitive functioning outcome, particularly the Ambien. I know melatonin is kind of a natural process we have to some degree anyway, but...
Yeah, thank you for that, Robin. I think that's a great question. Dr. Lucey?
Absolutely. The problems from COVID impacting normal sleep-wake activity have been just enormous. Mm-hmm. There's multiple reasons for that: the social isolation, the invasion of work potentially into the home hours, having to have children at home for school, disrupting when you can do your work, and sleep aids are sometimes something that individuals need. As far as medications like Ambien, those are best used for short-term insomnia, where someone can't get to sleep or can't stay asleep. And for longer-term treatment of insomnia, there's a therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is really trying to get to the cause of what may be keeping you up. For instance, are you worrying about things in bed, which is very common, because when we're in bed, it's one of the few times that we're alone and it's quiet sometimes, and we can really think about things that have happened during the day or things that are
Sometimes
happening
you think
tomorrow.
about terrible things and
Right.
start getting anxious.
Working on your sleep schedule,
Yeah.
helping you relax around bedtime and really improve those habits. Melatonin is also an effective sleep aid, but it's best used fairly early in the evening. Many patients that I see are taking it later, closer to their bedtime, say at 11 o'clock at night. But if you were going to take it, you'd want to take it earlier, say around 8 o'clock in the evening, because you're trying to increase the rise in your blood of melatonin. But you can have the same issues with all of these aids, where there's a tolerance that builds up, and when you take them away, it can make the insomnia worse. And so I would primarily recommend them under the supervision of your doctor, to be used for short term.
Short term, okay, that's critical. Robin, thank you for that question. I'm going to go back to the phone lines. Kathy is calling from Webster Groves. Kathy, hi, you're on St. Louis on the Air.
Thanks for having me on. So since I have gone through menopause, I don't seem to sleep as well. I mean, I had the disruptive sleep, of course, when I had kids, but I wake up at least twice in the middle of the night needing to use the bathroom, and then I'm able to fall back to sleep without a problem, but I don't feel like I'm getting a great night's sleep because I get up at least twice.
Yeah, Kathy.
And I actually, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I try to not drink a lot of water before bed, and, reduce the amount that I'm drinking throughout the evening, but it doesn't seem to help.
Kathy, that sounds like a frustrating problem. Dr. Lucey?
That sounds like a very frustrating problem. One marker that one thing I always like to ask patients when I see them is, how are they feeling during the day? How is the sleep disruption, impacting the daytime function? And it sounds like it's potentially, very disruptive to her. And I would definitely encourage her to see her physician and potentially be evaluated for sleep disorders by a sleep physician. There are a number of sleep disorders that become more common as we get older. For instance, obstructive sleep apnea that I mentioned earlier, and some individuals will wake up having to use the restroom or thinking that they have to use the restroom, but it's the breathing events that have woken them up, and then they have to go to the bathroom, and they think that's what woke them up.
And it's not that. It's a breathing problem.
Right. And treating the obstructive sleep apnea with therapies like CPAP therapy, where you wear a mask and you breathe air at a higher pressure than the air in the atmosphere, can in many instances eliminate those nighttime arousals due to having to go to the bathroom.
We're talking today to Dr. Brendan Lucey. He's an associate professor of neurology and the director of the WashU Sleep Medicine Center. We do have a number of other callers who want to join us, so I want to get right back to that. But you mentioned this is something people might want to talk to their doctor about. I understand at the Sleep Medicine Center, you're doing these sleep studies for people. You're actually kind of getting to the bottom of what's happening here. So if somebody just has a primary care doctor and they're not that interested in this, there's specialists who can sort of dig into their sleep.
Absolutely. I mean, when we see a patient at the sleep center, we're trying to figure out what potential sleep problems that they could have, and then to get them to the right either treatment, the right testing to figure out what the problem is, or if we've identified the problem at that visit, the correct treatment. So, for instance, I mentioned obstructive sleep apnea. If I see a patient and they're at risk for that, I do need to do a sleep study of some kind to determine how many breathing events they're having during the night per hour. And that's done with a study either at home, a home sleep apnea test, or a study in the sleep lab, where we monitor brainwave activity to tell if someone's awake or asleep, and we monitor the airflow through the nose and the mouth, respiratory effort. We have actually bands that are around the chest and the abdomen, and we're able to look at the different types of breathing events that people are having and determine how many are occurring per hour of sleep. And that's how we both diagnose it and determine the severity.
Let's go back to the phone line. Cedric is calling from Belleville. Cedric, hi, you're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hey, how you doing, Sarah? Big fan. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
The question I had was, I've heard a lot of people with some that struggle with sleep, and some people are so caught up on the 8 hours of sleep. And I heard sometimes that some people work better with a shorter sleep cycle than they don't actually need the 8 hours. I was just trying to see how relevant, how is that even accurate?
Cedric, that's a really good question there. Dr. Lucey?
That's a great question. The 7.5, 8 hours of sleep per night is really in the average that's needed for a person, and it is what we'd call a bell curve or a normal distribution, where you have some individuals where shorter sleep times is what fits in with their needs, whereas there's other individuals who need to sleep longer. And I think I would I would go by how you're feeling. Do you feel like your sleep is restorative? With one caveat, and that's research does show that when you're chronically sleep restricted, so let's say you need 7 hours of sleep per night, 8 hours of sleep per night, and you're only getting 6, 5.5, that you build up, problems with reaction time, for instance, and attention, but you may not perceive that you're as badly impaired as you actually are. So a study from about 20 years ago, they measured the reaction time of individuals who are at different levels of sleep restriction. Like some got 5 hours of sleep a night, some got 6 hours of sleep a night. And they showed that the more sleep restricted you were, the worse your reaction times became. But your perception of how sleepy you were kind of went up and then flatlined. So you didn't perceive that you were as sleepy and performing as bad as you actually were.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
So you don't want to get used to having too little sleep.
Right,
This could be a real problem.
Right.
We have time to squeeze in one more phone call. Let's go to Christina calling from Webster Groves. Christina, hi. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I am a 63-year-old female, and within the last year, my sleep has gotten poor, and I really don't understand it other than perhaps it is my age, but I'll wake up really early in the morning, and sometimes I literally cannot go back to sleep. Sometimes I can. But I'm just wondering what this is all about, and maybe it's hormonal. I don't know.
Christina, those are some really good questions, and it does seem like as we get older, we find ourselves waking up earlier and earlier, and it's not good. What's going on there?
It can be complicated. I mean, so there are a number of different changes that occur as we get older. One potential problem can be that your internal clock begins to change, and your normal sort of internal clock bedtime is earlier in the evening, and so after you sleep your 7-8 hours, you end up waking up in the middle of the night at say 2 or 3 in the morning, and that can be very disruptive because you're going to sleep a lot earlier than you would like, and obviously waking up a lot earlier when others are asleep. But as I had said before, there's a number of sleep disorders that become much more common as we get older. Obstructive sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, and I think that if this is a significant new problem and sleep's very disrupted, again, I would encourage getting an evaluation.
Christina would want to rule out the more serious stuff.
Right, some treatable sleep disorders.
And if it's not one of those, it sounds like she'll be one of those early birds having dinner at 4:30. And I'm not talking out of school about my parents today, but this happens to people. So we put a poll up on Twitter, and it was interesting. I was curious if more people had trouble falling asleep or more people had trouble staying asleep. 29% said they can't fall asleep. 44% said they can't stay asleep. 27% said, who, me? I sleep great. There are those people out there. Maybe, Dr. Lucey, those are people who've been to your clinic. They've been healed. I mean, do you find that with treatment, people can sleep great even if they weren't historically great sleepers?
Yeah, with treatment, and then we identify a sleep problem and get the right treatment started, people's sleep can really improve, and their quality of life also increase in terms of the activities during the day that they can do. Obstructive sleep apnea, again, is a great example. Many individuals who start CPAP therapy and have significant sleep apnea, I mean, they're just, they don't go a night without those devices, whether they're traveling or...
So they really do work.
Right.
Well, it's good to know there's hope out there. There are people who are sleeping soundly in their beds. There are people who can get help. And man, this topic is just so important. And so I guess, the thought you want to leave us with today, I imagine it relates to cognitive decline. We want to avoid that.
Yeah, what I encourage everyone to do is that they allow themselves enough time to sleep. If they feel like their sleep is not restorative, to seek out medical help and to be seen by a sleep specialist and potentially get whatever the problem may be identified and treated.
Well, Dr. Brendan Lucey, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury with audio engineering by Aaron Dorr and production assistance from Jane Mather-Glass. It was mixed and edited by Jane. Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer. St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here. If you learned something new from today's episode, consider leaving us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the easiest way to help people discover our show. We appreciate it. Thank you. St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th, with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.